everyone, it's Linda from LyndaCreates, and I have a stitched project, but it started off as a painting, became a stitched project, became a slow stitched project, as well as an embroidered. I use thrifted and vintage and new product in this. So let me show you how I made this. I just opened my set of Inktense Blocks and grabbed some brushes and a scrap piece of fabric, which I wish I grabbed a bigger piece of fabric. This is just 100% cotton, and I'm just wetting down the fabric. Now, you can also use spray water if you want. I'm going to pull back just slightly. So I've been mixing some colors here, but what's really fun is if you take your block, and I'm going to do I'm going to blend it in there. And you could also blend that in if you want to soften that. So I'll probably make more marks and color it, and I plan to end up stitching it. So check back on my website, check back on my YouTube, see what I make. And I was playing with my Inktense Blocks. Last time I showed you how I used Inktense on muslin fabric. So I decided I'd do some slow stitching with it. So I pulled out some colors of, well, cotton, floss, a little bit of yarn, lace, and just a lot of other things. But I also had this fabric that I had thrifted, and it was just so pretty, and it worked so perfectly with that. So I decided to do some slow stitching, and I'm going to try to incorporate a lot of these colors and fibers, but I wanted to show you where I've kind of settled on. And I have some vintage lace that I had thrifted a while back. So this is what I'm planning. I have the painted poinsettia here. I have this was the upholstery fabric that had that little snowflake kind of dots on it. I tore a strip of this rather sheer fabric, but I tore a strip of that, and then I have my painting right here, and I'm going to do some stitching on this. I'm going to first stitch down this background with some very thin, I guess they call it crochet thread fiber. I'm going to do a stitch around the edge here to hold it down. I have the upholstery fabric, and I have some batting in back. I'm just going to go around with a blanket stitch. So I'm going to start in the middle here, and I've threaded up my needles. I think they're number 3 embroidery needles. And so what I'm doing right now is just the center of the poinsettia has like a pale green, or has green petals, leaves in there. So I'm just kind of doing that. Now that I have the greens started, let me show you the pinks that I'm going to play with. These are the main pinks. I have some yarn. Don't know if I want to use something fuzzy like that. I pulled it out. Right now, this is definitely the palette I'm going for. I'm going to start with this petal going up and away. And thinking is to leave some of the Inktense showing. So maybe this darker area here, and just stitch in the lighter shades, form the petal better. So I have this lighter pink right now sitting over here. I'm coming in with the next lightest shade. So I'm just going to again, I'm trying not to think too much, and I'm just trying to enjoy the stitching process. I think what's going to be unique in doing slow stitching like this is that there is no start and finish of a particular stitch. You just kind of go until you think, oh, I'm done with that. And it's a little different than what, if you do embroidery, what you do. And I have to say, those beautiful pieces of art that you see, for example, I'm being so inspired by Fleur Woods and her work. Here's a suggestion, is using a water erasable pen, because yes, you may have the flower stitched there, but you may not know exactly what you want it to look like. Like, I want this flower petal to actually be a little wider. So I might keep this side okay, but I want this side a little wider. Sometimes you just have to adjust your art. I guess I'm just experimenting because I love the concept of slow stitching. This is my first combination Inktense and stitching project. I'm still working on this one petal. I have the lightest pink. I have the next lightest pink. And just to add some variety, I'm going for the third lightest color. So I'm going to start introducing this next shade. And as I'm going, I notice it is getting a little bit harder to get through the fabric. So these are the three colors I have on there right now. I might introduce this color next, just so that it has some contrast. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start blending into this really light pink color. I think the beauty too of this type of stitching is that you just have to remember there are no rules, which is kind of what makes it much more relaxing. So I'm going to finish coming up on this petal, leave this a little dark. Well, this is actually one of the lightest petals. I think this will be a light petal too, because it's the one furthest forward. I'm going to stop there on that petal. So I'm going on with the lighter green, and I want to do definitely want to do some couching right here. And put in the center vein. I'm going to try something totally different here. And again, I'm going on the basis that there are no rules. So I did an odd number, 7 stitches this way. I'm going to try weaving back and forth like I did on my pegboard shelfie. And you have to start off with an odd number. And because this is I'm just going to try it. Catch one more. And if you don't want to change needles, just go use the back side of the one. I like the way that turned out. I like the fact that it doesn't have to be smooth and perfect, and it doesn't have to match the flower petal on the opposite side either. It's different, and I kind of like what happened. So I did some medium stitches here, and I need to do a little bit of light stitching. So I thought I'm going to try this yarn. It's a little like a mohair type yarn. Let me show you. So it adds not just a lighter color, it also adds a little bit different texture, which is, considering that the weaving had a nice texture, and this was thrifted yarn as well. And I realized too, I'm going to leave some of this area where I applied the Inktense. I'm going to leave that in that color so that it reflects the painting. I want the painting to continue to show over here, so I'm just going to do a little stitching just to outline this petal. Try not to pull too hard. I'm just doing a little back stitch. So there you could see that flower. So it has a little bit of the fluffy mohair type yarn. That was fun. I think, let's see what else I can do. Next petal, actually I think it's this one. Could be something like that. And now it can get a little bit darker towards the center. So because this petal is going behind here, it is going to be a little bit darker in that corner or that edge. I'll just find some kind of stitch to do along here. So I did some straight stitches to look like shading, and then thought it needed something else. So I'm coming back in now, same color, but I'm doing the French knots in there. again, just to add some texture to it. Okay, so there are some French knots in there, and I think I'm going to add some straight stitches to contrast that. So I add a little light pink highlight over here. What I'm going to do is weave into it again, like I did over here, and I'm using the back of the needle again. And I'm kind of doing it a little bit showing the fabric, a little bit showing the stitches, various stitches. So I started weaving this and I stopped halfway. So I'm going to leave it half woven, half straight, just to add texture and interest. I'm going to stop there for now, just because I have a little bit of floss on here. I'm going to do a few French knots. So what I want to do is go along this edge here to create like a cast shadow. And I am going to come back in maybe down here and add some French knots again. So now that I have the petals in front of this one, I can start working on the large one. I'm excited because it gets pretty dark down in the center here to show depth. So it'll be the first one that gets to go fairly dark, maybe even this dark. I'm trying to decide what stitch to do. Now this little area right here is part of this petal. So what I want this dark color to do is to define that edge. You can kind of see what I'm doing there. And again, I want this dark color to define the petal on the left. And I'll see how much of it I can weave. I've defined this edge, which is good, but now I'm going to start weaving it. It's interesting when you're in tight quarters like this. I just thought of something too. It'd be interesting to weave a different color in here. I might try that in another area. So as a bit of contrast to all the pattern happening here, I'm just doing a satin stitch just straight across. I'm just going to start doing the wilder stitches. There's something very freeing to just be able to change your mind and stitch in a different direction. I added some darker details here, and now I'm going to continue with the mohair type yarn up in this area because I want it to go lighter, because this part of the petal is in shadow from that petal. And I'm mixing in, like here I did some weaving, here I did some French knots, and then over here I did some straight stitches. So I'll probably do some weaving because I want to do a fairly large area of this lighter pink. So why not weave the yarn? I think I'll do that. I'm going to try something else here too. See how I have these French knots here? What's to keep me from going down this far, cutting into it? What I'll do is do some weaving now, from starting at this point. Doing it at an angle. Now I have that woven piece. I love how overlapping the stitches looks. That is nice. So now I'm doing the super light, almost white color. I'm trying to add texture while keeping areas that have the painting on it, the Inktense. I don't want to lose that. And so the next flower petal that I'm going to work on is this one right here, and it is should be getting shadow from this petal here, so I need to go a little bit darker. It needs to go the really dark color. So now that I have this really dark edge, I'm coming in with a medium pink, and I'm just going to do some French knots along that edge. I realize that as I'm stitching, and here I'm doing some French knots, is that as I'm working, I'm coming up with other ideas. It's almost as if as I'm working and doing these stitches, it's like my brain is opening up to different ideas. Why not do this? Why not add colors here? Why not, like I did over here, cross stitches over the other areas? There's nothing to stop me. It's very freeing to just allow yourself to play, and this is basically what it's doing. It's supposed to kind of look like a poinsettia, and hopefully by the time I'm done it will look still like a poinsettia, but from the very first, from the painting part, it's just kind of grown. So I did this petal, and I did a few different things on it. I crossed over, and then I did some really long stitches there, which I like. I should work on this petal first because it's in front. I have been stitching this flower, my poinsettia. I think I'm almost done with the pink stitches, and I did all kinds of French knots in there, some weaving, straight stitches, just all kinds of stitching in there. And I also left some areas so you could see the ink in there. I'm going to add some items to the center of it next to define that area, and then do some greenery parts too. But I just wanted to show it where I'm at right now. And you could see the various stitching. You could see the areas at the top there where I didn't add any stitches. So I wanted to basically see the Inktense come through. So it's just all kinds of stitches. So let me go ahead and do a little bit in the center. So I finished stitching the petals. I added some beads, some little orange wooden beads for the center, and then some little pink seed beads on the petals. I'd love to add a lot more seed beads, but just wanted to keep it a little subdued for now. I still have some areas that you could see the painting on the petals. I really like how that turned out. The different stitches, just playing with the different stitches. Love adding all the texture. So I have the flower finished, and I'm starting to pin the embellishment parts. But as I was starting this morning, I have some late autumn, early winter sunlight coming in, and I just thought it was so pretty. Just do a shot like that just to share it. I just thought that was so pretty with the sunlight on it. I love that type of sunlight. But you can see the beads and such that I put on this. I highlighted some of the darker areas where the leaves would be add the most shadow to give it more distinction, I guess, or emphasis. And then you can also see here, like where I left some of the Inktense coloring showing through. So I just wanted to share that, and I will start stitching, but I just wanted to share how the sunlight and the leaves blowing, it's just so pretty, makes me happy. So one of the things I'm using to embellish is this very beautiful fabric I thrifted. It tore beautifully along the edges, so I'm going to try and experiment in stitching it down, but trying to keep these wrinkles. And I'm using just a very small embroidery needle with white thread, and I'm going to do a running stitch along the side and keep some of these wrinkles that I have pinned in there. So I have the fabric stitched down in place, and I have all of these nice wrinkles and folds built into it now because it is stitched, so it's holding itself in place. But I also have the lace that I want to do, and basically what I did with the lace is I turned it as I went, so you can see how it has these turns. I want it to also have the loose gathered feel that I have on the fabric. So right here, the old lace is kind of torn, so I'll leave it a little bit more torn in the nice color. Let me bring that in. Isn't that cool? I'm trying to see if I could keep it looking dimensional, like basically like it's just the fabric and the lace are just strewn across it and just casually looking pretty on it. I finished stitching down the fabric and the lace. So with the, you can see with the beads and the variety of stitches I did in here, there is some weaving, there are French knots, straight stitches. I used some like a wool. In some areas I used cotton pearl. In some areas I used embroidery floss. You could see where I did the Inktense painting originally on the fabric. And just to say, when I did the Inktense on the fabric, that was a test. So this was not going to be, this fabric wasn't going to be used for anything. But I liked the way the flower turned out so much that I decided to stitch it down. I did some beads in the center, these orange beads, to look like the center of the poinsettia. And I did an outline stitch around the leaves and the flower petals. So a little bit of several different types of stitches. all very easy. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this now that it's finished. Might find a frame for it. That is my painted fabric, embroidered, slow stitched, beaded, thrifted holiday project. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. Please check out my website, LyndaCreates.com. That's Lynda with a Y, Lynda, LyndaCreates.com for more inspiration. And check out my YouTube for more video projects. I do paper crafting. I also do this textile crafting now, and just having so much fun doing it. And I wish everyone a happy holiday. And thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!